This film was originally conceived as a low-budget, disposable comedy, but it became a massive hit, launched one of the most iconic comedy franchises of the 1980s, and gave actors some of the most memorable characters of their careers. Movies Inside Out presents Police Academy is a 1984 comedy about how people of all shapes, sizes, ages, and abilities become real police officers. Is it true that the film is based on real events? How did Michael Jackson influence the creation of the characters? Which character wasn't in the original script, and should we expect an 8th installment? We'll answer all these questions and more in our new video. The creation story. The idea for Police Academy came to producer Paul Maslansky while he was working on a project in San Francisco. He noticed a group of cadets tasked with managing a crowd of onlookers during filming. Among the inexperienced recruits were a very overweight woman and an elderly man, both being harshly scolded by a sergeant. When Maslansky asked how these people had been accepted into the police force, the sergeant explained that the mayor had mandated the department to accept anyone who applied for training, though leadership had the authority to dismiss them within 2 weeks. This got Maslansky thinking, what if these people actually became police officers? This idea formed the basis of a 2-page concept, which he sent to his colleague Alan Ladd Jr., owner of an independent production company. Ladd liked the concept and agreed to help finance the project. Neil Israel and Pat Proft, known for comedies like Bachelor Party and Real Genius, were hired to write the screenplay. Initially, the director's chair was offered to Dom DeLuise, who declined the role. The producers then turned to Hugh Wilson, known for the hit TV series WKRP in Cincinnati. However, Wilson had no prior experience directing feature films. Warner Brothers initially wanted him only to rewrite the script, but Wilson agreed to join the project on the condition that he also direct the film. Wilson studied numerous comedy films to determine the tone for Police Academy. He decided to reduce the number of crude jokes and significantly rework Israel and Proft's screenplay, which was also too long for a standard comedy. Warner Brothers, however, refused to let him cut the shower and party scenes, so Wilson aimed to make them more stylistically artistic. By the time Wilson finished rewriting, almost nothing remained of Israel and Proft's original script. Ladd's production company rejected the revised version and nearly abandoned the project. As a result, Wilson, with Maslansky's help, restored the funniest jokes from the original, and production was finally greenlit. The most controversial scenes were the one involving a prostitute under the grandstand and the scene where Sergeant Harris crashes into a horse's rear. The creators reached a compromise, and these scenes were included in the film, albeit with fewer explicit details. Casting. The producers of Police Academy didn't consider major stars of the time due to the film's modest budget, and focused instead on young and lesser-known actors. Among the contenders for the role of Carrie Mahoney were future stars such as Michael Keaton, Bill Murray, Robin Williams, Bruce Willis, and John Travolta, but none of them were cast. The final decision came down to Steve Guttenberg, already known for the dramedy Diner and the sci-fi TV movie The Day After, and David Naughton, who starred in the comedy horror An American Werewolf in London. Guttenberg believed Naughton would be chosen, as his audition received high praise. However, despite a silent reaction to Guttenberg's reading, he got the role. Rumor has it that Guttenberg wore an old police shirt belonging to his father, Stanley Guttenberg, who had worked for the NYPD. This may have helped him land the part.
It fits! Damn thing fits! I thought there were no more spaces.
Interestingly, Tom Hanks also auditioned for several roles in the film, including Mahoney, but was not selected. Kim Cattrall, who had appeared in the critically acclaimed dramas Tribute and Ticket to Heaven, was cast as Cadet Karen Thompson. Later, she said that Police Academy was her favorite film among her works. Critics also consider Thompson one of Cattrall's best roles.
Why do you want to be a cop?
I like to dress like a man.
Marion Ramsey, who played the shy cadet Laverne Hooks, made her big screen debut in Police Academy. She revealed that she based her character's soft voice on Michael Jackson's, whom she had met during a stage production. Ramsey was so immersed in her role that during the scene where Hooks yells, "Don't move, get back!" sound engineers were surprised by her ability to shout so loudly. Interestingly, the name Laverne appears in the closing credits, but is not mentioned in the series, except in one scene in the 5th installment.
Do you know what that means, Hooks?
I'm not sure, sir.
What?
Former football player Bubba Smith was cast as Moses Hightower. Director Hugh Wilson was a longtime fan of Smith's football career, though Smith was the last actor to be cast in the film. During test screenings, Hightower became the audience's favorite character, leading to an expanded role.
You didn't hit the brakes!
You didn't tell me to.
Donovan Scott, known mostly for small roles, played the overweight cadet Leslie Barbara. During his audition, he impressed the creators by doing a somersault, which convinced them to cast him.
Hold it right there, guys.
Boy, if it isn't Leslie Barbara, the police officer.
Yeah.
The role of Larvell Jones, the sound effects specialist, wasn't in the original script and was written specifically for Michael Winslow, a comedian and beatboxer known for his ability to mimic a wide range of sounds with his voice. In early 1983, Winslow performed with jazz legend Count Basie in Long Beach, where Hugh Wilson and Paul Maslansky were in attendance. Winslow's performance so impressed them that they approached him that evening to join their project.
Cadet Mahoney, report immediately to the Commandant's office. Cadet Mahoney.
Not only did Winslow play his character, but he also recorded numerous sound effects for the film and voiced all the announcements heard in the Academy. This detail even became a small joke in the film. After an announcement about cadets reporting to the parade ground, Martin asks Jones if it was his voice, to which Jones denies it.
Was that you? No, man.
The role of Commandant Eric Lessard was originally written for Leslie Nielsen, but he couldn't join the project. The part went to George Gaines, a star of Broadway musicals in the 1940s and 1950s, who was already well known for his role as John Van Horn in Tootsie. The role was also offered to Robert Conrad, who chose instead to play a police chief in the comedy Wrong is Right, co-written and directed by Neil Israel. Conrad later regretted his decision, as Wrong is Right wasn't successful. Interestingly, the name Lassard is an anagram of Lardars, meaning fatus.
So many unusual events have happened to this graduating class, and to me also.
Unlike Conrad, David Graff, who played the gun-obsessed Eugene Tackleberry, trusted his instincts. Previously cast only in minor TV roles, Graff had to choose between working on Police Academy or the potentially more promising melodrama Racing with the Moon. Initially, Graff found the Police Academy script weak and silly, but decided after a few days that it would be a hit.
Son, where did you get this gun?
My mom gave it to me.
George Bailey, who played Lieutenant Thaddeus Harris, almost turned down the role. Previously a TV actor, Bailey originally intended to continue working on the series St. Elsewhere, as its shooting schedule overlapped with Police Academy. However, Bailey left St. Elsewhere after disagreements with its producer and joined the Police Academy cast.
I want you two squad leaders to take Mr. Mahoney here and run him until he throws up.
The role of Sergeant Debbie Callahan, the smart yet sexy blonde, went to Leslie Easterbrook, who was also known for her small TV roles.
That's how it's done. Who's next?
That's me! I love it.
Bruce Mahler, a newcomer, was cast as the clumsy cadet Douglas Fackler, though Lance Kinsey also auditioned for the role.
And the police academy is such a dangerous place!
Honey, don't worry. I'll be okay.
Kinsey later joined the franchise as Proctor in the sequel. Cadets George Martin, Chad Copeland, and Kyle Blankus were played by Andrew Rubin, Scott Thompson, and Brant von Hoffman, respectively. The prostitute hiding under the grandstand was portrayed by Georgina Spelvin, a former adult film actress who had just left the genre.
I just like to do it in strange places, that's all, okay?
Why the hell didn't you say so?
The film also included director Hugh Wilson, who appeared as the furious driver whose car Hightower crashes into. Wilson took on this role only because the actor originally cast as the driver was found drunk in his trailer at the start of filming.
Seems like he decided to celebrate his paycheck without leaving the set.
Filming process. Filming for Police Academy took place from May 30th to July 14th, 1983, in Toronto. The photo booth scene was shot on Cherry Street Bridge, while the Academy building was formerly the Lakeshore Psychiatric Hospital, which operated from 1964 to 1979. For over a decade, the building was primarily used for film shoots until it was purchased in 1991 by Humber College as one of its campuses. The riot scenes were filmed at Kensington Market, and the famous Blue Oyster Bar was actually the Silver Dollar on Spadina Avenue. Most indoor scenes were shot at Lakeshore Studios. Interestingly, the city where the events take place is never mentioned in the film. In the party scene, Tackleberry plays the saxophone, not by coincidence, as David Graff was a talented saxophonist in real life. The surname Tackleberry even became a slang term in private security for officers overly obsessed with firearms. Many comedic moments were unplanned and occurred spontaneously during filming. For instance, when Hook says, "There's probably a back door," Marion Ramsey tries to open a jammed door. After several attempts, she manages to open it and run through. This wasn't in the script, but the creators found it funny and kept it in the film, even speeding up the footage for comedic effect. The joke with the shoe polish on the megaphone also emerged on set. Director Hugh Wilson heard a similar story from a crew member about British director Michael Winner during one of his productions. Harris's signature baton wasn't in the script. A background actor brought it to the set, and George Bailey immediately decided it was perfect for his character. In the scene where Barbara floats down the river in a photo booth, the booth nearly tipped over as it approached the bridge. This wasn't planned, and the booth could have flipped at any moment. Similarly, Fackler's hubcap falling off when he drives onto the road was purely accidental. There were injuries on set as well. Initially, the wall on the obstacle course was too high, and during rehearsals, a background actor jumped off it awkwardly and broke his leg. For her role as Hooks, Marion Ramsey had to wear a special padded suit. The plan was to show her losing weight throughout the Academy's intense training and appearing slimmer by the end of the film. However, due to time constraints, the scene with a slimmed down Hooks was cut. Nevertheless, a brief shot of her slimmer version remains in the graduation march scene. The tight filming schedule also disrupted other plans. For example, the scene where Martin returns from the women's dormitory at dawn was actually filmed at sunset. Scott Thompson and Brant von Hoffman, who played Copeland and Blanks, had to wear wigs. The haircut scene was shot early in production, but later it was decided that the characters should appear with their original hairstyles when they first arrive at the Academy. Speaking of wigs, the actor who insults Mahoney in the parking lot at the beginning of the film wearing a wig reappears later in a different role without the wig. In the horse scene, he plays the man who catches the fainting woman. There are a couple of references to the creators in the film. The truck the cadets crash into has Maslansky's written on its side. March 4th, the date shown in the prologue, is the birthday of co-writer Pat Proft. Mahoney's first name, Carrie, is Neil Israel's middle name. The soundtrack was composed by Robert Folk. Initially, the filmmakers wanted Elmer Bernstein to write the score. Folk based the main theme on Bernstein's Stripes theme and drew inspiration from the music of the police drama Hill Street Blues. The Police Academy soundtrack was released as a standalone album only in 2013. The Gutenberg Bible, Steve Gutenberg mentioned that Donovan Scott filmed a behind-the-scenes amateur movie about the making of Police Academy. However, it was never released. Some of that footage may appear in a new documentary about the franchise's creation, which was planned for the 40th anniversary of Police Academy. The film is not yet publicly available. Movie mistakes and errors. Let's count funny mistakes in Police Academy. Despite the lighthearted humor of the movie, it's full of small goofs that might have slipped under your radar. The self-repairing booth. When the photo booth falls into the water, it loses a black panel, but just seconds later, it miraculously reappears. Looks like the booth has a built-in self-repair feature. Shifting shirt patches. The patches on Mahoney's shirt seem to have a life of their own. First, they're on the left side, then they shift to the right, and then disappear entirely. Even his shirt magically changes into a completely different one. Inconsistent training duration. Captain Reed says the academy training will last 14 weeks.
You'll get 14 weeks of academy training and discipline.
But Commandant Lassard later mentions 24 weeks.
I promised I'd keep you here the full 24 weeks.
This might be due to Lassard's forgetfulness, as Harris often has to correct him during speeches to recruits.
14 weeks.
A few moments later.
After those 12 weeks, some of you will be police officers and some of you will not.
Changing postures. In one shot, Thompson and her mother are sitting upright, but in close-ups, they suddenly turn to face each other. Maybe the director wanted to add more dynamic tension to the scene. Early arrival. When the women who gave Martin a ride drive off, Fackler's car can be seen in the background, even though he's supposed to arrive later. Looks like Fackler decided to show up early. Short-arm cadets. The cadets are instructed to stand at arm's length, but the background clearly disagrees with this rule. The line remains compact and doesn't even attempt to stretch out. Switching places in line. In one shot, Thompson stands to Callahan's right, but in the next close-up, she's suddenly on her left. How does she do that? A cinematic mystery. Barber's magic. Copeland's hairstyle changes on the way to the barber. Maybe this barber works remotely? Ever-changing journal entries. The entries in Harris's journal change from shot to shot. Even the journal feels the need to update itself constantly. Mysterious mattress. Fackler is initially sitting on a neatly made bed, but then inexplicably starts dragging the mattress somewhere. Why and where? A mystery. Magically growing sideburns. Blankes suddenly sports sideburns, even though his haircut should have left none. Maybe it's a rapid hair growing technique? Shifting lockers. The lockers behind Copeland mysteriously move. First, they're directly behind him, but then they appear farther to the right. Disappearing photo frame. When Mahoney enters Lassard's office, there's a photo frame on the desk, but it vanishes within seconds. Maybe an assistant was in a hurry to remove it. The unpredictable megaphone handle. The handle of Harris's megaphone switches between facing him and facing the window. Even the megaphone can't decide where to face. Shooting range errors. The cadets are immediately taken to a shooting range with targets set at 23 meters, skipping the usual progression from 9 to 14 meters. Looks like they skipped a couple of stages. Triggerless shots. When Barber accidentally fires the shotgun twice, he doesn't even pull the trigger. This shotgun must have a mind of its own. Unshaken Tackleberry. When Barbara points the shotgun at the cadets, everyone ducks in fear except Tackleberry, who stays calm because he knows the gun isn't cocked and has no ammo. A true professional. Long-haired stuntman. A stuntman with long, thick hair replaces George Bailey in a motorcycle scene. Maybe the stuntman thought dramatic hair would add flair. Self-lighting cigarette. When the prostitute asks Barbara for a light, he runs to Mahoney for help. By the time they return, her cigarette is already lit. Seems like the cigarette had a fiery mood. British spelling. A shop sign spells center as center, following British English conventions, even though the movie is set in the US, where it should be center. Looks like the Canadian crew forgot to change the sign. Super fast car wash. Hooks drives through a car wash, and her car is completely dry within seconds. This must be a car wash with instant dry technology. Cars with double identities. The car Hooks uses for her driving test is different from the one Hightower flips. It has different headlights and a different grille. You can even spot a hand helping to lift the car. Great team effort! Pre-dented tray. When Barbara hits Copeland with a tray, it's already dented before the impact. The tray knew what was coming! Vanishing Copeland. After Copeland is knocked down, he disappears from the ground within seconds. Where did he go? Nobody knows. Dismissal error. When Harris expels Mahoney after the fight, it contradicts Lessard's earlier statement that Mahoney couldn't be expelled because of Captain Reed's orders.
Because I promised Captain Reed. I promised I'd keep you here the full 24 weeks.
Maybe Harris wasn't in the loop? Chameleon apple. The apple Fackler throws starts out red, but turns green mid-flight. A true chameleon apple. Reflective helmets. The cadets' helmets are matte inside the bus, but become shiny and reflective outside, showing the reflections of the crew. Falling box repeats. The same box falls off the truck twice in succession. Maybe the box enjoyed the fall. Shifting robber. During Barbara's fight with robbers, one of them in the background keeps changing positions. Maybe he was practicing yoga during the fight. Vanishing nightstick. Barbara's nightstick moves from his hands to his belt between shots. The nightstick decided to take a break. Disappearing cap. Thompson removes her cap and holds it in her right hand, but moments later, it vanishes, and her hand ends up on Mahoney's shoulder. What other mistakes and inconsistencies did you notice in the film? Share them in the comments. We'd love to hear your observations. Deleted scenes and funniest moments from the movie. In the DVD commentary, George Bailey shared that in the scene where Harris shouts at Barbara,
"Move it, move it, move it! I could show a movie on your butt, fatso!"
there was an improvised part that didn't make it into the final cut. In this version, Harris speculates about which specific movie he'd like to watch on Barbara's backside, and settles on the 1958 musical comedy Gigi. In most TV versions, all swearing is either cut or dubbed with alternate words. Nude scenes are also removed, and the sequence with the prostitute under the bleachers is shortened. However, in NBC's version, there are additional frames in the scene where the cadets laugh at Harris after the horse incident. In these extended moments, Harris threatens to gut the cadets for their prank, and Thompson hesitates about attending the ball with Mahoney because of his behavior. Now, let's revisit the funniest moments from the movie.
What's your name, cadet?
Thompson, sir.
What's your telephone number, Thompson? Come on, eyes front, telephone number.
555-2467, sir.
Just a little off the side, please.
You bet.
You can do that?
Sure. This ain't the army, you know.
What are you in for?
I'll show you.
God damn it, stop that!
You will learn.
Princess, come here.
Princess? Looks more like a prince to me.
Son, where did you get this gun?
My mom gave it to me.
Stop that stereo before I blow your goddamn nuts off, asshole!
Tackleberry, we really need to talk.
Interesting as well as very, very stimulating. We see another view.
Hey.
What's wrong with this man?
There was gunplay, sir, and he missed it.
Worldwide recognition. Police Academy was originally scheduled for release in August 1984, but producers decided to move up the date to avoid competition with Gremlins, Ghostbusters, and The Karate Kid. The film premiered on March 23, 1984, instantly topping the box office in over 1,500 US theaters and grossing $8.6 million during its opening weekend. Ultimately, the movie earned $81.2 million domestically, making it the sixth highest grossing American film of the year. Internationally, it brought in $68.6 million, for a total gross of $149.8 million against a modest $4.5 million budget. In West Germany, Police Academy was the most commercially successful film of 1984, earning it the Golden Leinwand Golden Screen Award. It was also nominated for the German Jupiter Award in the Best Foreign Film category, but lost to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Interestingly, Warner Brothers didn't have high expectations for the low-budget comedy, with no major stars. Studio executives hoped the film would bring in 2 to 3 times its budget, but it became an unexpected blockbuster. This success was a relief for producer Paul Maslansky and Alan Ladd Jr.'s production company, which had previously released decent but unprofitable films. The first Police Academy remains the franchise's most commercially successful entry, even though it was the only film in the series to receive an R rating, which restricted viewers under 18 without adult supervision. Critics, however, were less enthusiastic. Many described the film as crude and tasteless, though undeniably funny and likely to enjoy lasting popularity. Famed film critic Roger Ebert gave it 0 stars out of 4, claiming that Police Academy was neither funny nor even attempting to be. Audiences clearly disagreed. The film's box office success was bolstered by a VHS release that sold 107,000 copies in just 1 week. It's no surprise that Warner Brothers soon greenlit a sequel. The second film, Police Academy 2, Their First Assignment, directed by Jerry Paris, premiered in 1985. Most of the original cast reprised their roles. While the sequel performed well at the box office, critics received it far less favorably than its predecessor. This pattern repeated with Police Academy 3 Back in Training, 1986, which also fared better commercially than critically. Interestingly, Bill Paxton was originally set to appear in the second and third films, but opted instead to take the role of Private Hudson in Aliens, directed by James Cameron, despite being offered half the salary. Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, directed by Jim Drake and released in 1987, was Steve Guttenberg's last appearance in the series. Despite rising production budgets, each new installment saw declining box office returns and increasingly harsh critical reviews. Still, the producers continued making films, as they remained modestly profitable. In 1988, Alan Meyerson directed Police Academy 5. Assignment: Miami Beach. A year later, Peter Boners helmed Police Academy 6, City Under Siege. Finally, in 1994, Alan Metter directed Police Academy 7, Mission to Moscow, which was the franchise's least successful film. It barely reached limited release and grossed a mere $126,000 against a $10 million budget. Originally, Paul Maslansky had envisioned 10 films for the series. Michael Winslow, David Graff, and George Gaines were the only actors to appear in all 7 films. Winslow also starred in the 1997 television spin-off Police Academy, the series, which, like the later films, failed to find much success. Bubba Smith could have appeared in all 7 films, but declined to participate in Mission to Moscow in solidarity with Marion Ramsey, who wasn't even offered to reprise her role. The first 6 films aired frequently on television throughout the 1980s and became a favorite among younger audiences. This led to the creation of a Police Academy animated series in 1988 to 1989, along with action figures and comics. The original Police Academy is still shown regularly on British television during the Christmas season, despite the only reference to Christmas being the song Santa Claus is Coming to Town, played during Hook's driving exam. Even former US President Bill Clinton was a fan of Police Academy. When he met Steve Guttenberg, Clinton admitted the film helped him get through a tough time. At the 2016 Democratic National Convention, he shared that he once watched 6 films in the series in one night with his daughter, Chelsea. For most of the cast, Police Academy was the pinnacle of their careers. Steve Guttenberg managed to build a moderately successful career afterward. Kim Cattrall continued acting in films and on stage, achieving international fame in the late 1990s as Samantha Jones in Sex and the City. Meanwhile, George Bailey, Leslie Easterbrook, Donovan Scott, and Michael Winslow continued appearing in lesser-known films and series. Sadly, many cast members have passed away. David Graff died of a heart attack in 2001 at age 50, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. Bubba Smith died in 2011 at 66 from an overdose of diet pills. George Gaines passed away in 2016 at 98. And Marion Ramsey died in 2021 at 73 after a brief illness. Efforts to revive the Police Academy franchise began as early as 2003, but after the failure of the 7th installment, finding producers willing to back the project proved difficult. In 2010, reports emerged that New Line Cinema planned to reboot the series, with Paul Maslansky involved and a new cast of characters. In 2012, Scott Zabielski was named director. Steve Guttenberg confirmed that a reboot was in development. However, no updates on the project have been released since. Would you like to see a reboot of this iconic comedy franchise from the 80s? Or is it time to let Police Academy rest in peace?